This tutorial is going to give you a brief introduction to the programming language R. So firstly, why use R? Well, R is open source and free, and it will run on different computer types, including Windows and Mac. It has lots of built-in libraries that are good for data cleaning and running statistical analysis, but it also allows you to build and create your own functions. R is now widely used across many large companies, including Google, and it's a great way of producing high-quality graphs. The R for Data Science textbook is a great introduction to R, and you can get free access to it using this link. The first thing that you need to do when you want to start using R is to download the R programming language and also R Studio, which is the integrated development environment. So R Studio is basically an easy shell that allows you to write and run R code. You can download them both by using these links, but do remember that you need R installed first for R Studio to work. Here is what the R Studio interface looks like. The first pane is the text editor, and this is where you can write and edit code. And you can also save your scripts that you have written here if you use this pane. This pane is the console, and this is where your R code will be run. You can also write code here, but you won't be able to save it. This pane is your work environment, so any data sets or variables you create can be viewed here. And finally, this pane contains useful information such as a file browser, and also any graphs you make will appear here. Each time you use R, you will need to set the working directory. And this is particularly important if you want to load in your own data to analyse. This is because when you read in data in R, it will look for it in your working directory, so you will need to make sure it's set where the data file is saved. Also, anything you write in R and want to export will be saved here. To see how to set your working directory, please watch the video on the next slide.
To set your working directory on R, you go up to Session, Set Working Directory, and then choose Directory. Here will open all the folders on your computer. So you need to choose the one where you want to store your R scripts. So for example, I will click Documents and Open. And here you can see that we have set the working directory to my Documents folder on my computer.
Then, if you're using your own data, you will need to read it in. And you can do that by using the following piece of code. So my data is what you want to call your data. In other words, it's your variable name. The arrow is an assignment operator. It assigns the code on the right to the variable name on the left. Then you want to tell R to read in your file and what your file extension is. So in this case, it's a CSV file. And finally, this is what your data file is called. It is important to note that when reading in some file types in R, this will require you to download different packages, and it may also require a slightly different code. So this is just an example. So while base R can do a lot of things, sometimes you will need to use functions that require you to download additional packages. It is good practice to install and load any packages you want at the beginning of a script, otherwise you may forget and run into an error further along in your code. You can do this by using the following piece of code. So to install a package, you can simply type install.packages and then in brackets and quotation marks the package name. And then to load them, you simply type library and in brackets and quotation marks the package name. It's important to remember that you only need to install a package to your R environment once, and it will remember it forever, although sometimes it will need updating. But each time you want to use it, like when you're starting a new script or session, you must remember to load it in using the library function. Now to get on to some coding. At its most basic, R can be used as a calculator. For example, for multiplication, you can use the asterisk symbol, or for division, you can use the / symbol. One tip for starting with R is that when writing your own code in the text editor pane, if you use the hashtag symbol, it lets you write comments, which means that R will not run that line of code. This is useful to annotate your code and remind yourself what you are doing, especially if you're likely to refer back to the code in the future. Here are the basic data types that will be used in R. The first is numeric, which is numbers. The second is logicals, which is true or false. So for example, whether a number is a multiple of 5, you can get R to return true or false. And finally, characters, which are usually letters or words. To assign variables in R, you can either use the equal sign or an arrow. It is important to remember that equal signs can be used for other functions in R, so if you'd like to differentiate between them, it would probably be better to use the arrow. You can create variables out of the different data types mentioned on the previous slide. So here's an example. When you create a variable, R stores it in the global environment, which is the top right pane of the R Studio and looks like this. Don't forget that if you assign something to the same variable name, R will overwrite what the previous variable was. There also may be times that you want to remove variables that you have created. You can do this in two ways. You can either use the brush button in the global environment pane, which you can see here, or you can use the remove function by typing rm and then in brackets the variable name that you want to remove. In both cases, they will be removed from your global environment and it will look like this. Another useful tip is that round brackets, like in the above example, tells R that you're using a function. And if you don't know what a function does, you can type a question mark and then the function name, or help and in brackets the function name into the R console, and information will appear in the bottom right hand corner of the screen, the same pane where the graphs go. Once you have finished analysing or cleaning data in R, you may want to save the dataset as different file types. Here are a couple of examples of exporting data as either a text file or a CSV file, and as you can see, in both cases they use the function write. As with reading in data, you may need to install and load different packages depending on what type of file you want to write, and there may also be some slight variations in code. Remember that any file you export from R will be saved in your working directory. And finally, I will end with some advice on errors. Everyone gets errors in their R script at some point, and these are identified by warnings written in red in the console where your code runs. If you do experience an error, Google can be your best friend. It is very likely that someone else has experienced the same error, and there are lots of useful forums that you will probably find an answer to, like Stack Overflow, which you can find using the following links. However, do remember that when asking about your error, be as specific as possible and copy it and paste it if you can.